Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Big Valley Living, where I usually talk to you about my cancer journey because I have stage 4 colon cancer. But it is September, and September in the United States is the month of preparedness. It's a good time to start preparing for winter storms, possible power outages, and other types of emergencies. Right now, there's a chance that we could have a government shutdown. Of course, we've all heard about that. And that could cause maybe some shipping and other kind of disruptions. So think about things like that as you're preparing your home for any of life's little emergencies. I personally started preparing because of colon cancer. I needed to have part of my colon removed, and there was going to be a lengthy healing process. And that's when I got extremely interested in making sure that our home was prepared for at least 6 weeks to 3 months of normal activities. That would include the diet that we had at the time, making sure that my family had their normal diet while my special diet was going to be covered. And also to make sure that it was wintertime. Also to make sure that we had everything in our home that we may possibly need in case I didn't have the mobility that I expected to have, and that we would still be safe. So this is September 2025, and I want to thank you for visiting our channel as well as all of our excellent collaborators this month. It's almost the end of the month, so I'm going to do a little bit of let's call it just kind of random housekeeping items that I want to make sure are covered before the end of the month. Now tomorrow we're going to have a giveaway, and we're going to have 3 really cool prizes that we'll be giving away. Make sure to come over to my channel, and that'll be 3 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll kind of go over things that have already been discussed this month, and we'll be doing random picks to see who's going to win these excellent prizes. They are all designed to help you to withstand emergencies in your household. So there are a few things that have been discussed this month, and I want to kind of expand a little bit, and then, like I said, just kind of bring up little things to make sure that you haven't forgotten them. And also, I want to make sure that I cover things for people who may not have a fireplace, who may live in an apartment or a small building, just little tiny cleanup things, okay? So one of the things that we've discussed is making sure that you have alternate lighting. Now, some of that could be things that are battery operated or crank operated, such as flashlights. And then another thing that is widely discussed are candles. One thing that we don't talk about a lot when we discuss things like candles is what type of candle would be the safest type of candle to burn in the case of an emergency, especially if you have to keep your house locked up because of cold or inclement weather of some sort, okay? Now, if you have to do that, you do need to think about what is being put into the air that you're breathing, especially if you don't have power that's going to recirculate air in the house. You may not have fans that are working at the time, that type of thing. What do you ideally want to use to burn? You want to use a natural wax. You may want to use 100% beeswax. You may want to consider soy wax, and then also coconut wax. So these are natural versus being chemical based, okay? And paraffin wax is usually probably what you're going to find in 90% or more of the candles that you're just going to find at your basic stores. While those might be okay in a situation where you have really good ventilation, consider having the others on hand in case ventilation is going to be a little bit hindered because of the weather that's going on outside, or maybe you don't have windows in the rooms that you're going to be using and you can't necessarily crack a window to let any harmful contaminants escape the room. While we're talking about candles, let's not forget about the fact that unfortunately, the human brain makes mistakes. What if you forget that you had a candle on in a certain room? Please make sure, and for more reasons than just this, make sure that you have multiple fire extinguishers in your house, and make sure that they are current and fully charged. Make sure that they'll cover a multitude of different types of fires. Don't just get the cheapest one that you can find at a discount store. Make sure that you check them often and make sure that they are charged. There's a green zone that you'll see, and that will let you know that they are charged. We need to also think about the fact that while we're going to amass water to make sure that we have water for cleaning, for making sure we can brush our teeth and keep ourselves clean, make sure that we have fresh water to drink and our pets have fresh water to drink, we also want to think about water conservation, because they say that 1 gallon per person per day is enough. I find that very hard to believe, even with hardcore conservation. One way that you could prevent needing to have water for non-essential uses, let's say, is dishes. Now, I personally do not subscribe to using paper plates and things like that, and disposable napkins. I really don't like having those in my house. However, in the case of an emergency where you want to be conserving water, you really should have some paper products around the house that you can use to put your food on. Now, if you get the compostable type, that would be better for the environment. They are more expensive, but they may be kinder to the environment, especially if you have to use them in a long-term situation. If you have certain paper products and you have a fireplace that burns wood, well, you might be able to use some of those recycled paper products to put in there to help you start a fire in the event that you need to start a fire. Be careful with that, obviously, but it is something to consider. Also, plastic eating utensils would save having to clean silverware proper that you normally use. If you have to use silverware and you don't happen to have a stock of things like, plastic spoons, forks, or knives, then consider having yourself a container that you can put a little bit of bleach water in, and you can put those in just until you can then safely clean them with soapy water solution and dry them off. That would at least keep everything in one place until you can safely clean them without having to use a ton of water to do onesie-twosies when you're thinking about cleaning any utensils, because you are going to have pans and pots. One of the items that we use in the case of power outages, because we don't have a gas stove, is our fondue pot, and we just use a little sterno can underneath there, and we use that. There are also some really excellent things that you can find, and I'm going to refer you back to the Provident Prepper, who has a really, really great video out this month in this collaboration that will show you different ways that you can cook in your house without having your normal cooking resources, such as an electric burning stove. Even a gas burning stove might not be something that you can use in the case of an emergency. So anyway, check out their video about that, because it's very, very handy. And if you don't have something like a fondue pot for an extreme emergency, this may give you ideas that you could consider using to your advantage and picking up to have in the event that you don't have your normal cooking sources. Blankets. Okay, a lot of us like to donate things that we're not using anymore, such as older sheets, older blankets, things that may have a small tear or rip in them. I am going to show you something that has literally been around. I am nearing 60 years old. This has been around at its core longer than I have been on this earth. And that would be an old blanket, such as a wool blanket. So I'm going to show you this. I made this 40 years ago for my father when I got my first sewing machine. I was about 18 years old, and I got my first sewing machine, And I was so excited to have it. I wanted to make something for my mom and dad. So I decided I would make a really heavy blanket. On the inside of this very simple blanket that I got some scraps at, I think it was Michael's or Joann's. It was a long, long time ago. But inside of this is a wool blanket that my mom and dad got when they got married in 1964. Now, it was kind of ugly. It had some worn spots because we had used it all our lives as an extra blanket when it got cold in the winter. Back then, we had single pane windows in our house, and no matter how good the heater was working, bedrooms got a little bit cooler than with the central heat and air that we have these days. So thankfully, my mom and dad had these old blankets that were laying around, and I took one of them when I got married and moved out and used it in this instance. And one side has some corduroy, one side is flannel, and on the inside is wool. Now we call this the happy blanket. There's nothing fancy about it. It could be sewn by hand. I used a very simple Singer sewing machine, and I just took embroidery floss to make sure that it doesn't bind up when I throw it in the washer. It's also made of items that can be hand washed or thrown into the wash machine. This blanket is a staple in our household, and I'm telling you, don't throw away old blankets. Use them again. There are so many memories in this blanket that I can't begin to tell you. So consider doing things like that. If you don't have any scrap materials, then think about going out and finding some. But if you do have scrap materials around, or you have a thinner blanket or 3 or 4 thinner blankets that you can put together, even if you wrap them in flat sheets as the outer part of them, well, there you go. You're going to have yourself a very, very warm blanket. Keep the old blankets anyway. You may want to put them over your windows to insulate your house. If you have days of power outage and you may not have a fireplace or a wood stove to help keep you warm, and you don't have enough candles going, that would also add warmth to the room. Make sure that before you donate those extra socks and slippers and warm-up pants and sweaters, especially anything with wool, because wool is a great insulator. Think about having a drawer or a tote with extra socks, extra sweaters, extra zip-up hoodies, that type of thing. You may not need them, but you may have a neighbor who purges their house every season and then finds themselves in an emergency. You might be able to help them to stay warm by layering up. And then once you start getting busy outside, you can take those layers off and still have body heat and everything. So I would highly consider thinking 2 times before you donate. Is that going to be useful to me or a neighbor or a family member in an emergency situation where power is not available to keep a home warm? Your smoke and your CO detectors in your home or apartment, that they're working and that they have fresh batteries. It's almost a general recommendation to replace and they're typically 9-volt batteries, but sometimes they're just the round double or triple A. Ours happen to be powered by 9-volt. So we always keep extra 9 volts on hand. Make sure that they're not 10 years old, because those aren't going to work as efficiently as something that you've purchased more recently. And make sure that you have changed them, okay? So typically they are changed when the times change. And we are coming up on the winter time change that is going to go back to standard time zone in the United States. And that's when my husband and I typically will go in and change those batteries out. So right now we know that we have our batteries on hand, and we know that we're going to be changing them out. And it's just easy for us to remember that it was when the time change happened. That way you've gone only 6 months, and then make sure that you properly dispose of those batteries, please. Don't throw them in the trash and put them in a landfill where they're going to leak all of those nasty, nasty acids and chemicals into the landfill. Everybody should have their documents like a driver's license or an ID card, your birth certificate, your social security card, that type of thing. You need to make sure that you have copies of those in a secure location. I recommend at least 2 thumb drives, okay? And make sure they're password protected just in case. Heather at the Needy Homesteader did a video on making sure that you keep the hard documents in one easy to grab location so that if you have to leave your home or all your power goes out and you need to have those documents in place, she's got this really neat binder that she shared with us. I'm going to recommend that you go and watch all of the videos this month, but that one in particular gives you a resource that you may want to consider and ideas where if you don't want to purchase that type of a resource, think about keeping everything into a binder, but keep all of that information scanned onto a thumb drive so that you have grab and go and you keep it with you if you have to leave your home and you didn't get that. This would be your home insurance documents, your life insurance documents, your social security card, your copy of your driver's license, all of those types of things, your birth certificate, any kind of identifiable information that is going to prove to somebody else who you are in the case of an emergency. You will also want to keep other items in there like, really, really precious documents to you and your family. Don't depend on the cloud to keep all of that, because when the power goes down, it's not just going to go out where you are and you may not have access. And depending on what the emergency is, everybody might not have access to the cloud. So that's why I'm saying don't keep those items in the cloud and think that you're going to be safe and that you're going to be able to access those things 24/7. In the case of a true emergency, that really might not be the case. So keep your copies. When the power goes out and it's expected to be out for any length of time, yes, you're going to, ideally you're going to have backup power to keep your refrigerators and your freezers going, and you're going to have canned foods and you're going to have dry foods that you can add water to, possibly freeze-dried foods, that type of thing. However, most refrigerators have perishable foods in them, things like cream and milk and butter and cottage cheese, that type of thing, okay? So if you have perishable items in your refrigerator, which most of us do, think about consuming those products before going into the pantry to things that are more shelf stable, before breaking things out of the freezer to thaw. Although you can do that too and put them in the refrigerator, and that'll keep your refrigerator a little bit colder, a little bit longer if you don't have backup power or you are unable to utilize any kind of backup power. Consider reusing water bottles if you buy like the gallons of water or the just little liter bottles of water to drink. Consider reusing those, put them in your freezer, leaving some headspace so it can expand without cracking, and that'll keep your freezer going a little bit longer. And then as those thaw, you could use that water to water plants if you have some sort of say herbs on your windowsill that you could still use. If you have indoor plants that you could use like lettuce or something. In the climate that we live in, we can grow indoors part of the year and it actually makes sense. And I'm not going to use my water that is suitable for drinking to water those plants, but I wouldn't mind using water that'll kind of filter down through the soil that is coming from a plastic bottle. And then in a pinch, you could also use that water by putting it into a filter like a Berkey, if you were fortunate enough to have something like that, or a Brita water filter. You could always do that. You could also boil water for the prescribed amount of time. I'm going to encourage you to go Google that. And make sure that it is sterile before you're going to use it to put into your body. You could also use that water for cleaning if you needed to clean, say, your shirts and things like that. You could use it for rinsing and, if you're cleaning things in the bathtub, to do a load of laundry, even though you might not have your washer and your dryer available. I personally just finished using a bottle of bleach that we use when we're doing certain laundry items. And I started to put it into the recycle can like I normally do. And then I thought, you know what? I can put water in here, take some tape and label the outside of it, and have some lightly, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of bleach in it, but I can use that water for things like putting silverware in so that I can reuse it and wash it. I'm not going to drink that water, but I could use that water for cleaning and for disinfecting surfaces like countertops and things like that, or say a cutting board or something like that. Another thing you could actually use if you need to clean your counters and things like that is vinegar, or if you're lucky like we are in the Big Valley, we have lemon trees, lime trees, and orange trees. Citrus is an excellent, excellent way to clean things like your wood and bamboo products, and you could use a little bit of salt as well to make sure that those things are disinfected and ready for another use. I certainly would not recommend doing that if I was using it for any kind of meat products. I would try and keep things segregated, like this is for, vegetables only and that type of thing. Keeping track of time. If you lose power for multiple days and you don't have backup power, or you just want to have natural power for things like keeping time, I'm going to consider getting wind-up alarm clocks, old-fashioned watches that you may need, grandma's old cuckoo clock. Time to dust that bad boy off and make sure that it works, because those work on weights and balances. So all you have to do is make sure that you remember to rewind those clocks. We have a grandfather clock, and it starts making noise at 7:15 in the morning. So we know that we have a reliable time source all the time. Now, there's one thing that I don't want to forget, and it hasn't been discussed a lot, and that is, what if it's summertime? What if it's hot outside? What if you don't have air circulation and air conditioning and all of the things that we've become accustomed to having to keep our body temperature regulated and keep ourselves cool when it's warm outside? Two suggestions for you. One, have something like a dedicated water bottle for each person in the family that you keep clean, potable water in, that you can use to spray on your face, your arms, your body. Even get a shirt out and get it, dampen it up and put it on, because you're probably not going to be out doing stuff anyway, but it'll keep you cool. Another thing you could consider doing, if you can't go outside, if you don't have a swimming pool at your access, or a river or pond or whatever, if that's, your thing, consider filling your bathtub with water, just room temperature, cold water that comes out of the tap. Get yourself in that water every so often and let yourself air dry. It's going to naturally let you cool down, and it'll bring your body temperature down a little bit. I'm not talking about throwing ice cubes in there, because you probably won't have any after a few days anyway. But consider doing something like that. It's going to help you to be able to stay cool in the event of a power outage during really, really hot weather. So that is all I have for you today. I just wanted to make sure to bring up these sort of one-offs that I haven't necessarily heard discussed in detail, but it's all of these little tiny things that accumulate to make you a happier, healthier, more comfortable, and protected person in the event of any kind of emergency that life throws at you, whether it's a hurricane or a storm or a power surge of some sort, power outages. Other things happen, like to me, it was a medical thing that was planned, but it was only planned to a certain point. Then you have to think about what if. And you don't have to what if yourself to death, but if you do know that you're going to have limitations, by golly, plan for those, and plan that they might last longer than you thought. Have a great day. Have a great week, and no matter what you do, make sure that you're prepared for any kind of life's emergencies. Have a great day. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. See you later. Be kind.